Hello and welcome back to another episode of Journey, a MedPro podcast. We are so excited that you're joining us this month for our conversation on AI. Our very special guest is Dan. He is the Director of Digital Strategy and Innovation here at MedPro, and he helps our teams leverage modern technologies and processes to ultimately improve the candidate experience. With over 15 years of technology management experience, Dan is an expert in the field and he continues to expand on his knowledge. He is currently pursuing his PhD in information management at Tilburg University, where he studies innovation, organizational change, and leadership. Welcome, Dan, to the podcast.
Vanessa.
How are you today?
Doing great. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us about AI, which is our big topic for today. We're going to talk about what it is and ultimately how is it going to impact or potentially impact the healthcare industry and the healthcare workers. So to start, we want to just give a brief overview or description of what is AI and why is it such a big deal right now?
Yeah, so AI, I'll give you kind of the Cliff Notes version of AI. Originally developed 75 years ago when computers did not have the capacity they have now. In the last 10, 15 years, we've developed new hardware that can handle what these new AI tools can do. And essentially, AI is a technology that mimics what humans can do. The easiest way to think about it is AI is a general purpose technology, kind of like light, electricity, the wheel, and people expect for AI to have dramatic societal impacts the way that the light bulb did.
Yeah. And that's the big talking point, right? Is AI going to take my job or is AI going to make my life easier? And we're going to explore that discussion a little bit here today, starting with just overall, if we head into the healthcare system, we head into a hospital, some of the ways that we anticipate AI based on what you know and what I've researched, the way we anticipate that it will impact the healthcare industry is ranging from administrative to diagnostics to intervention, right? And so from your seat and from what you know, how do you foresee some of these capabilities impacting the day-to-day in a hospital?
Right. So to start, I would go with the administrative side. That's where we've seen it in the workplace. People use ChatGPT to write emails. ChatGPT is now integrated with maybe a desktop system that people use to do their daily work. So this is something that's already happening in the office, in the workplace. The ability of AI to do a similar function in the administrative functions of a hospital it's fairly easy to see how that could work. It's a little bit more difficult to imagine only because of the regulatory elements of healthcare and the challenges there for safety and privacy. But the use case is clear from a technology standpoint. Like you said, there's also diagnostic opportunities for AI. Most people who are familiar with healthcare know that AI has performed better even than some physicians on identifying illnesses in X-rays and MRI images. And so it's easy to see how AI brings tools to both the administrative side of the hospital work setting and the diagnostic side.
Yeah. For the administrative side, kind of sticking with that topic, this is potentially a huge impact. I know we've talked to nurses that we work with here, and one of the big issues and the big challenges that nurses and other healthcare professionals face on a daily basis is the amount of time that goes into the administrative tasks that ultimately takes away from time spent with the patients. And so the hope is that we're teetering on is it going to take my job or is it going to make my job easier, that hopefully, with it taking on a lot of these administrative tasks like record keeping and taking notes for an EMR, that it will in turn give more time to the practitioner to truly provide patient care directly
right.
versus spending that time on a computer.
That's right. If patient to say nurse ratios remain the same, and nurses part of the nurse's job is now done by AI, it's easy to see that a nurse would have more time to spend on a patient, which means that stressful workload maybe is a little bit less stressful.
Yeah, yeah. And when we think about it, most nurses probably didn't go into the role to complete paperwork.
No,
So
these people who want to care for people.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So I would hope that's the piece. I know in researching, I did come across one specific AI system, I guess, or software that does that. It essentially listens to the conversation and then takes the important information and translates it into the EMR. Now, of course, we know errors still exist. So I'm sure there's still a human aspect to reviewing that and making sure it caught it correctly. But it, to me, feels like a step in the right direction.
Oh, completely. I can think back to see when I saw a physician several years ago for sleep apnea, and he had a hand recorder that he was recording into, and it involved him like writing a letter to me with his voice that a person then typed out for him to sign. That's if someone doesn't need to do that, especially if it's a healthcare professional, that's really leveling them up so they can do more healthcaring than administration. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does help take some of that human error out at the end of the day, right? Because the whole purpose of an EMR in this sense is to help maintain information and transfer it across multiple different practitioners that may or may not interact with that particular patient. So, and again, human error occurs frequently. And it does in diagnostic, right? Kind of going right back into what you were talking about, how some AI have reportedly done better at certain tests of diagnosing certain things. And I'm no expert, but I would assume it's because you're taking out human error. You're taking out that subjectivity ultimately.
Well, the thinking that proponents of autonomous vehicles say, look, the benefit of the car, look, it's strange to not have a driver.
Yeah.
But the reality is this car doesn't get tired. This car doesn't hear a telephone ring. This car is not distracted in the same way that a person is. And so, while there are things that are unique to people, especially healthcare professionals, empathy and unique insight that a nurse might bring to the bedside that I can't imagine a robot bringing to the bedside.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if a robot doesn't get tired and is able to transfer, I'll say, the administrative part of the job, I was going to say the boring part of the job, right? The part of the job that most healthcare professionals didn't go into healthcare to pursue, that's a win. That's a win not only for the healthcare worker, for the patient.
Yeah.
Right? And at the end of the day, for society, which is why people are excited about AI.
Yeah, yeah. On the patient side and, putting on, I guess, the, playing devil's advocate for a second, one thing that comes to mind for me as always being on the patient side, because I'm not a healthcare practitioner, is the safety of my data, especially my health data, right? So if we're now taking my data points, who I am, my age, et cetera, and you're plugging all of that into some AI, whether it's ChatGPT or something else, you see all of these news coming up of AI systems being sued for using certain information. And I would think that when it comes to private health information and HIPAA laws, how is that going to be regulated? And is that an area of contention for people?
I mean, it's an open question, I think is probably the truth of the matter. My personal opinion, having been in tech for a while and seen the way that systems get built, and it's true that AI systems are different, but the way that these systems work is they rely on data. And so if, say, the builder of one of these systems does not train that tool on your data, your data is still private. It's still personal. And so it's really a matter of using the metaphor IT people use as containers, right? So your data is in one container, and the data that bot was trained on, which maybe is a clinical study or public data that it's been allowed to be trained on, your data is safe. That's how I feel about it. I'm a diabetic. I see a doctor every 3 months as a result. I use AI, it's on my hip. It helps me sleep better at night and be healthier during the day. And I'm not concerned. I mean, I give that data all the time to the doctor's office. I don't feel personally at risk for that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I'm a kind of an optimist at heart, and I give a lot of credit to the healthcare workers who spend their lives trying to help me, as well as the secondary folks, the IT folks who are building good systems to help people be healthy. So yeah, I would feel good about it if I were you.
Yeah, I'd like to also be an optimist. I mean, I think any new technology comes with pros and cons, or anything new doesn't even have to be technology. Anything new comes with pros and cons. Yeah. And I think the more we use it, the more knowledgeable we become, and the better we become at managing how we use it and how we educate on it, right? Because some people don't have the luxury of understanding it from this perspective of understanding how does it keep it private. Some people will take that at face value, and others will need that. So us being able to then also educate around it will be an important aspect.
You couldn't be more right. I mean, there have been a lot of studies about how different generations have different acumen with technology, right? I'm a millennial. I am not as good at technology as Gen Z is. I mean, that's just how it is, and I'll probably always be like that. On the other hand, I'm better at technology than, say, a boomer or Gen X, right? And that's okay, but it also means that we have different starting places, right? Gen Z, these are true digital natives, people who grew up. When I say grew up, I mean they might have been 2 years old holding a smartphone.
Right.
I was out of college before a smartphone came out. Okay.
Really dating yourself.
Yeah, well, that's okay. I know I'm old enough, right? And the reality is that, like, I'm also a technologist, so maybe I'm a millennial who's comfortable with what it means for new technologies to emerge and how they become adopted. But it's especially, look, there's kind of different types of folks out there. Whether you're maybe a Gen Xer who is not familiar with AI, not as comfortable with technology, I can understand having questions about the safety of an AI tool. Right. On the other hand, there are plenty of people who might be Gen Z, but just did not experience technology as a child. That's a thing. I mean, whether in the United States or elsewhere, there are plenty of people who don't have a lot of experience with technology. And, I think you're right that educating both groups, right, in general, people who are not as familiar with technology, is a key to the success of this kind of technology.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you end up with people who are uncomfortable, afraid, and that's where things can get really dicey. Because misinformation is dangerous, right?
Absolutely.
And we don't want to live on that.
And there's so much of that out there, right? Because everything is at your fingertips now. There's so much information out there, and that information overload ultimately impacts adoption time too to a new technology.
That's exactly right.
So I want to actually go back to something you had said, right? From your personal experience, you essentially have AI as an intervention tool, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Or a treatment tool.
Yes, definitely. That's exactly what it is.
It'll, this is kind of a small thing, quite literally, right? Because you're carrying it around and it's portable, but it has such a huge impact, and it is new. How long-ish would you say you've had?
So this technology's been out for a few years.
Yeah.
It's improved, though. The first generation of this technology, I was using a different device manufacturer, and I wasn't sold on it. I didn't like the way that it performed. And we moved to a different manufacturer that put their product out a little bit after the other one that I chose not to use.
Yeah.
And the result is it's quite powerful. This is the last 5 years this kind of technology has come out and been on people's hips. It sits on my belt. And it's been a life changer for me, frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it gets me thinking, right? Because there are people who grow up with diseases like diabetes, right? And there are people who get it later in life. And that's a very different path. And, seeing the technology progress and ultimately have an impact on your health, a positive impact on your health because it's getting better, has to feel so good, right? And and I'm sure it changes the type of conversation that you're then having with your provider, because you're not necessarily spending all this time talking about ultimately data points, right? They're able to look at that and then probably, I would imagine, spend more time on talking about how can we keep progressing or maintaining. But I don't,
Yeah,
you
no,
tell me.
it's a good. You're right. I would say the conversation has evolved because of the technology. As a diabetic, the fact that the pump relies on capturing my blood sugar through a wireless sensor means that data is still a big part of the conversation. What it does, though, is because the device, what it does is it prevents low blood sugar, it prevents some high blood sugar, and in doing so, kind of narrows the challenges associated with care management. So, yeah, that's how it's evolved, and I couldn't be happier. Honestly, I couldn't be happier.
What I love about it is that I'm going to, you are a testament really to the positive impact of AI, right? And you work in tech. So you get to see the impact of your area of expertise in first person, right? And that's huge. And I would hope that someone who's listening to this and might be going through something similar, has a family member going through something similar, that it gives a little bit of hope to the progress that comes with medicine. I mean, we talk about medical advances all the time, and we know that it has advanced quite rapidly over the last few years, but this is, I think, really going to just vault it.
I'm excited about it. I'm really excited about AI for what it can do for healthcare and beyond. I mean, at the end of the day, because it is a tool, right? AI is a tool that belongs to humanity. And my hope for humanity is that we use it to help humanity. Big surprise, right?
Yeah.
And that means both in the healthcare space and beyond. There's a lot of opportunities for, it's just like electricity and clean water is this same kind of technology. Clean water changes societies. And my hope is that we can use AI in the same way.
Yeah. It's really having an impact on a positive impact on the provider by alleviating some of the that administrative work that is just so time consuming.
Unfun.
And taking away from the direct patient care, from the patient impact, not just the patient. I mean, oftentimes you're also working with those families and talking to those families. So it's giving time back in that sense. And hopefully with that also alleviating some of the stressors around patient ratios. And it's also having the positive impact on ultimately the patient and their families, because it is going to give some of that time back. And I know for me, if I go to the doctor, and I think back even, a year ago, or even longer than that, before we had computers and electronic medical records, right? The amount of time they'll spend taking notes versus the amount of time actually conversing has changed in the last few years with a little advance such as I no longer have to manually with pen and paper write this out and file it. No, I can just type it. So now with AI potentially doing it for you, it's going to, again, change the dynamic of provider to patient.
Yeah.
And then ultimately keep moving into intervention and diagnostics and all of that. One other thing that I see really being impacted by this is the education piece of it. We know that there is a nursing shortage in this country, and frankly, in more than just this country. But
that's right.
But part of it starts with the schools and not having enough staff in the schools, not having the bandwidth to teach nurses or future nurses.
The pipeline is too narrow. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. We can't get enough nurses out. That's right.
So if you had to think about, or had to venture a guess as to how AI can help there, what would you say?
Well, same thing, same kind of pattern, right? If AI can do things to help people, how can it help us in education? I've seen some really interesting use cases. So like Khan Academy, it's a tutoring company, and they have this tutor bot that is incredible. It tailors its attention to the student with whom it's working. And it gives this kind of very, it seems like a person, right? In the way that it tutors, the way that it thinks, but it's specific to the individual. It delivers a level of attention that is not affordable for most people to pay for a human being to tutor their child that way. So although we haven't seen a lot of AI at the in higher education yet, I would anticipate seeing the same kind of use cases, whether it's a tutor who helps a nurse learn about some disease process or procedure, or whether or not, sometime in the next couple of years, we have individual tutors training nurses in delivering coursework. Like, I don't know where it's going to go. And I stay away from predictions because predictions are famously wrong. But I think that it's not too hard to imagine that AI could really influence not only the one-on-one tutoring, but also some of the practical experiences, some of the practical training experiences that nurses have.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Yeah, no, that actually just popped into my head because I remember a conversation we had with one of the nurses that works here, and she had mentioned to us that one of the labs actually monitors these, whether it's an actor or a mannequin, I guess, or a realistic mannequin, and the interaction between the nurse or the student nurse, and so I imagine that with AI, if we can have more of this real immediate input and output in the labs, right, those simulation labs, because that's the theoretical knowledge is always a challenge to absorb, but then to apply it, right? So I love what you talked about with this personalized tutor, and yes, you're right. I mean, so working in learning and development and training, right, on as part of my profession. Funny enough, today alone, it's like I have a class of one, and that person said, I really like this one-on-one training experience. And there's pros and cons to that, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
But it does have a huge impact because not everyone learns the same way. Not everyone processes the same way. And there are so many benefits to being in a group because you get to build off of each other and help each other out and learn from each other's successes and mistakes. But the tailored version is also really valuable because sometimes what works for 5 people in the room doesn't work for one other person. And I really like that you brought up this tailored tutor experience because, I mean, regardless of whether it's a nursing profession or an allied health profession, anything in the healthcare field, as you are learning it, the human body is
marvelous and complex.
Yes. I was going to say crazy, but yours is better. But yeah, it's hard no matter which side you're going into in healthcare, and it's so much information to process, and having this individualized tutor I can only imagine the impact it would have on learning.
Yeah, I think you bring up an interesting point, though, which is that people learn differently and students learn from each other. And so it seems like the type of thing that we would want to really be thoughtful about how we use a tool like that to make sure that we are maintaining some of the benefits of group learning. Because you're spot on. This is spot on. You did remind me of a movie that came out in the last year or two. I didn't see it. I am nerdy, so I did watch the trailer. The guy, I think it's called Gran Turismo or something. This guy learned how to drive a race car in a video game and then became a real race car driver.
Is it based on something? Okay.
It's based on a true story, yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things that never would have happened if we didn't have video games, which are very much relying on AI type of technology. So it's the same pattern. It's hard to know how fast these things will evolve, but it seems like that's the direction we're going.
Yeah. I am excited to see what it does, because it is, like you said, our pipeline is so narrow. The path to get to a healthcare career relies on so many stepping stones and so many people to help you get there. And if we have a shortage at any point in time, it's just going to keep getting worse. So whatever tool we have, being mindful of how we use it is very important, and maintaining the ethics behind it and the integrity behind it. And I know that's a big conversation right now anyways. How do we manage this? What regulations need to be put in place?
Yep.
Whether it's healthcare related or not is a big conversation from the few glimpses I've seen. Is there, have you seen anything that pops up that you're like, yeah, this conversation is definitely still pretty heated around regulation and ethics? And
Well, I mean, to me, it's more of an open question. I've not seen any articles that suggest to me that any government is. I've seen like some governments put things out on AI, but they're more like statements and commitments. I haven't seen any real regulation of AI yet, and it's easy to understand why. It's like it's hard to regulate it. What would that really look like? That said, I'll play kind of the advocate for regulation for a second. Not that I think that it's necessarily the right thing, but like there's a lot of risk in AI. It's tremendously powerful. I mean, the voice, the chatbot technologies that we have right now, if tuned and tailored in certain ways, they would have a tremendous advantage in persuading you to do something that you've not experienced before, that we've not experienced before. Yeah. So imagine if we all start using Gemini, right? Google chatbot, and it becomes our main way of accessing the internet. Right now, we know that Google has ads at the top of their search results, right? So there's not a lot of risk in that, right? At the same time, if you were talking with a chatbot, that chatbot could maneuver and influence you, because in the same way that Google right now has all kinds of information about your preferences, about your shopping habits, about when you're awake, when you go to sleep, right? All these things. Imagine if a bot that you spoke to had that, a bot that you speak to or chat with doesn't reveal its intentions in the same way as a search list that has ads at the top of the list. Right. I know those are ads, I skip them, right? So I don't know, I guess like to say that I can understand why people talk about regulation. AI is like nuclear power. It is a tool that we have been able to harness that is powerful. And anything that's powerful can be used for good, and it can be used for evil or harm. And that's, I'm optimistic and I'm hopeful that humanity makes good decisions about this new tool. That's yet to be seen, though. We've got a lot of challenges these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, to your point, the fact that the conversation is being had is a step in the right direction, in my opinion, right? Because if we weren't talking about it at all...
Head in the sand's not a winning strategy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I know Europe's data laws are also very different, right? And while we're not going to get into that, we really won't know what this looks like you said, predictions, especially from my seat, because I have no area of expertise to lay back on. But I think time will tell. And as this technology continues to progress, and it is, right, it's progressing each day, really, we're going to see more and more on how do we adjust, how do we handle it, and as we start implementing it more and more, it will show us how we need to adjust, right? From the few things that I've seen, whether it's, chatbots that are geared towards specific industries. I know there's one for, I think it's Ask Nursing Times or something, that is geared towards nursing, and the questions you ask there will help you more on the nursing side of things. And I know if we think back to, and we had asked this question too, is there a lot of Googling happening in the healthcare profession? Is that something that happens on a regular basis, or online searches, I should say? And the answer was, yeah, every day, right? So if we imagine that this was compiled locally for that hospital in a chatbot, I don't necessarily think it's less information, but perhaps more digestible, because it brings what going back to what we started with, is doing something like a human. So if I'm now explaining something like a human versus 15 or 20 Google search results that may or may not contain the exact information that you're looking for, that again gives back time. And as we start implementing those things, we will see, is it working or is it not?
Totally agree with you.
So
it'd be very interesting. I think that's an interesting use case, is as a kind of knowledge tool for healthcare practitioners. I mean, they have knowledge tools right now, but to harness AI for it is kind of the standard, leveling up of a product.
Yeah. I honestly see it being the tool that makes things more digestible. I think any time that involves looking through multiple sites, and obviously there's value to that, right? Because you can verify information that way. But you can also confuse yourself that way. So
and if it's a closed system like you're just describing, if I'm working in a healthcare setting and it's been tooled and created for me to use, I can trust the results in a way that I couldn't with a tool that is made for the general public. It'll be interesting to see how we get there.
Yeah.
That's been one of the challenges with an AI technology like ChatGPT, is tuning it to be just right for the case at hand. We're talking about healthcare professionals, especially nurses and other allied healthcare professionals. Can we get there? How fast can we get there? Because at the end of the day, our goal here, working here in our company at MedPro, is to help those folks do what they do, to their benefit and also to the patient's benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think, to kind of sum up where we are and optimistically answer the question, will this take my job or will it make my job better? I'd say, based on our conversation, I'm leaning towards the optimistic side of it will make your job better. It will alleviate the things that are more of a stressor, and it will bring back some of that true human aspect by taking away some of the inhuman piece, right?
I totally agree with you. That's right.
So that's where I see it going. But I do want to also touch on what you just talked about, right? How will it impact our travelers, right? Because there is that piece of being a healthcare professional in the hospital. This is your permanent job, and so day to day, this is what you're doing, right? And there are so many challenges that and so many rewards that come with being a traveler, right? Starting with the very first step of finding the right agency, finding the right job, getting things done, getting onboarded. And so, talking a little bit about how AI is impacting on that level.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's the question that I think about every day at work, really.
Yeah.
Look, healthcare professionals who are travelers know the uncertainty and risk that comes with a job like that. To uproot yourself and move hundreds or even 1,000 or more miles away from home for a short period of time on a contract, that's gutsy. I mean, frankly, I've never done that. It sounds gutsy to me. And the best thing that we can do as an agency is provide a better experience, more confidence to that traveler, and really at the end of the day, ensure that traveler is being compensated at the maximum amount that we can afford, so that they have not only a good experience with us and with their facility, but that they feel like it was worth their time, right? And so that's what we're looking at now, is how can we use AI to improve the traveler experience? The traveler experience for us is really, I'll break it up into two phases.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you have when we're talking with a traveler about working with us, whether, the traveler's trying to feel us out, is this a good agency to work with, they give me a good rate. And then once they're working for us, they're in the field, they're on assignment, there's really two very different experiences. when a traveler's trying to find work with us, we want to help them find the best job based on what they want and what they need, based on the rate, the location, their specialty, their experience, their career goals, all of those things. And AI can help us do that. AI is a tool. I was once told by an instructor, you need to think of AI as something that you could have an intern do. So, AI can sort through a document and find all, the instances or give you a decent summary of like a bunch of documents. And that's how we can use AI. It's pretty simple stuff at the end of the day, but it's new. We've never done it before.
Yeah.
No agencies have done it before. So we want to help improve the traveler's experience on the front end.
Yeah.
Finding an assignment, getting to work, right? Getting credentialed. On the other hand, once they're on assignment, navigating the experiences that on assignment travelers have is very different. Getting paid, right? Providing feedback about the facility. These are things where, again, technology can be used to harness the feedback that we get from travelers in order to partner with our facilities better. Yeah. And in order to navigate, or really, I should say, assign, that's not the right word, match is the right word, to help match the right traveler to the right facility, right? So that's what we're looking at right now. And it's an exciting time. I would say it's a very exciting time.
What I like about it is that very similar to what we just talked about, the impact will be on a hospital level, is having the same impact here, right? The goal isn't to remove the human aspect. The goal isn't to remove the human interaction, right? And as we discussed, that's not something AI can do. It's not going to have the connection, the empathy, the not even the active listening skills, right? It has data gathering skills, not active listening skills.
It feels like it's listening. It's not listening.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's not removing that because, and speaking as a former recruiter, that was my favorite part, was connecting with people and getting to know them, understanding their goals and finding the right place. And, just imagining having a technology that helps me do that more efficiently and ultimately then be a better service to my candidate, to my traveler, is huge. But we never want to take away the human aspect because we need it. Sometimes I think we like to think that we don't. I wholeheartedly disagree. Going from being a recruiter for many years to then moving into learning and development and training, you need that. It's what helps people progress.
I could not agree more with you. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I think people need people. And especially when they're taking, like you said, such a big step. Being a traveler is not easy. Being a healthcare professional is not easy. Being a traveling healthcare professional is not easy. It has a ton of rewards, but it is a big adventure, a big step, and comes with very unique challenges. And so having the person that has your back is so important. And you might not realize it until you need that person, but knowing that your recruiter is there and has all of these tools to make your life easier, at the end of the day, is huge.
Yeah.
So,
the way that I think about it, it's almost exactly the same. It's just different words, really. Let robots do the things that robots can do, so people can do the things that only people can do.
Love it. Yeah.
That's it. That's why we are here as an agency, is because of the people we have working with our people in the field.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think we are in agreement that that AI needs time to still keep growing and developing, but now is the time to start implementing, using it, experimenting with it, and figuring out how to make it better. But the positive outlook and the hopeful outlook is the one to have.
Very much.
And I am excited to see what this is going to bring, how it's going to change the industry, and how it's going to make people's lives better on both sides of the healthcare world, right? The provider and the patient and everything in between.
That's exactly right. The goal is for it to be a win-win-win, and I believe it will be.
Awesome. Well, Dan, thank you again for taking the time to speak with us on this. I'm really excited, and you might have to come back for part 2 a few months down the road.
I'll take you
and
up
see
on
how AI has progressed to that point.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you
Thanks
for having
so
me.
much.
Yeah.